Hello, dear viewers. Welcome to Letting It Out to Let It Go series, which is dedicated to healing, growth, and finding closure. Here, I narrate your personal stories, capturing the raw experiences and lessons that shaped you. This series is a safe space for anyone seeking to let go of the past that they've been holding for some reason by letting it out there, hence, leading to peace of mind. Names in the story have been changed out of respect for everyone involved and to protect their privacy. I remember it was morning and my mood was good, but my father was listening to the news loudly. It was a very negative news regarding the census, detailing recent incidents where fake government officials visited houses, gathered personal details about family members, and then those houses were attacked by fake police or goons who damaged properties then because the family belonged to a certain religious background. This targeted segment of society reminded me of an incident that had happened in our house a few days ago. My mother was home alone, and being the innocent person she is, provided details to strangers who came asking about our family. The issue was that the census was not scheduled to be held that year in India. It actually started in September 2024. The last census took place from 2011 to 2013, and it couldn't have been held between those years because it is conducted every 10 years in India. And it couldn't have been held between those years when this incident happened. Yes, it was supposed to happen in 2020, but due to the pandemic and general elections, it was postponed to 2024. There were 3 incidents when people came to our house, and my father always made them leave because none of them had official IDs, and he knew that the census was not happening that year. It was very stressful for us when my mother gave them our personal information. So, hearing that negative news, my mood suddenly changed. I now realize it triggered my anxiety back then. It just kept on building since then for the day. Me being on periods may also have influenced that anxiety attack. I felt so worried and overwhelmed and frustrated, and I was just getting ready for college. From the outside, if you'd look at me, I would appear fine. But from the inside, I was not. On my way to college, the whole time, I was trying to calm myself down, but I couldn't do that. When I arrived at the computer lab, I saw I was the first one to arrive, and there were just cleaning ladies cleaning the lab, and then Sam came. I felt a sense of easiness, that now I'll be fine. My other classmates who came regularly to college didn't treat me well, especially due to a recent incident that happened that I'll cover in another story, hopefully which will get featured on this channel as a video. During that incident, they were influenced by Smiley, my ex-best friend. They were also very biased, probably because Smiley would spend more time with them and they didn't know me that well. They seemed to have a negative perspective about me and were very often judgmental, treating me poorly. But Sam and another friend, Adi, were different. They were my friends, and Adi was like a brother to me. Both had jobs, so they rarely had time to attend college. That's why seeing Sam felt like a breath of fresh air. I thought that maybe if I gave it some time, I'd be fine. But that wasn't the case at all. He and one of the cleaning ladies started discussing the census, the very topic that had triggered my anxiety. I felt like, oh my god, there is no escaping this topic, it's everywhere. They were discussing how people came to collect family details every 5 to 6 years, claiming it was census. They were unaware that the census only takes place once every 10 years. I tried to explain that, but they didn't understand. To them, that was their experience, the so-called census that occurred every 5 to 6 years. Because I was already in an anxious state, the conversation was particularly difficult to handle. Although Sam and Adi were different, I had become so accustomed to not being taken seriously by my classmates that it sometimes affected my interactions with my friends. I struggled to communicate with them because it felt like they wouldn't listen to me, understand what I was trying to say, or take me seriously. At that moment, it felt pointless to even look up the correct information and show it to them, as I believed they still wouldn't believe me. The real issue, however, was my anxiety, which made it difficult for me to communicate effectively. I thought it would be better to let it go and just focus on my practicals. So I took my practical books and quietly went to do my practicals. It seemed that Sam noticed something was wrong with me and tried to lighten my mood. Unfortunately, he wasn't great at it, and it only made things worse. He thought I was mad at him and started apologizing, to which I did respond that I wasn't upset with him. I don't remember it well, but I think he made a joke or something similar. I naturally have a serious expression that people misinterpret as an angry or unapproachable attitude, which didn't help. Honestly, I was going through a lot at that time, and I was trying my best not to show it. But I guess it was still visible on my face. The best thing I could do was focus on my work and avoid talking to anyone as much as possible to prevent any drama. I was worried that a scene would be created and my fears came true. All I really wanted was to be left alone for a while. But soon other classmates started arriving and saw Sam apologizing to me, which made them question what happened. Sam explained that I was mad at him, and then Smiley came to wreck the day. She didn't say anything but kept looking at me as if she was silently observing me. Now, let me give you some context before I continue with the story. There were barely 5 to 6 of us who attended college regularly. According to my classmates, particularly Smiley, only those who came regularly would receive notes and help with practicals. Our system was that one person would complete one practical and print copies for the other 5. Another would do the second practical and print copies for everyone, and so on. This way, each of us would contribute to different practicals and our records would be completed faster. At the same time, the lecturer seemed preoccupied either not conducting classes or focusing too much on theory. I don't clearly remember which one was the case, but I do remember that she hadn't conducted practicals for a while. I thought, why wait for her to teach us? Why not learn the practicals on my own and keep progressing with completing the record? So I completed a few practicals ahead and informed Smiley, who was the CR, that is the class representative, that I had done some practicals since we couldn't rely on when the lecturer would cover them. Suddenly, Smiley started yelling at me, accusing me of disrespecting and speaking badly about the teacher. I was caught off guard and puzzled by her reaction. Instinctively, I snapped back at her as if a string had been pulled off. I wonder if this is what they call fight or flight response. In a raised voice, I told her that I wasn't talking badly about the teacher. I also told her not to shout at me when she herself had disrespected and spoken poorly about teachers in the past. She challenged me to provide an example, but in that moment, I couldn't remember one. But there definitely was a clear and strong example that I will talk about in a minute. Then, one of her minions looked at me and asked, "Why do you girls fight?" As if I started the fight. By that time, Adi arrived and witnessed the scene. He told me not to fight, and I'd like to think that he did this to de-escalate the situation. However, Smiley told him it was okay, that she was used to things like this, and then began recounting an incident from her childhood to garner sympathy. She tied that story to me, implying that she was used to people like me behaving that way. It felt like she was trying to play the victim. To my surprise, Adi didn't say a word in my defense. At that moment, even though I knew I was right, it felt like everyone was painting me as the villain. I felt very isolated. As if I'm the problem, suddenly I felt nauseous and ran out of the lab to the restroom. Thankfully, I made it in time, and in the restroom, I vomited and burst into tears. My hands were shaking, and I felt so vulnerable that I decided I couldn't handle it anymore. I needed to go home. I returned to the lab to collect my things, turned off the computer, and told them I was going home. At that time, students from another class too started coming in. The lab was big, so it could fit 2 to 3 different classes of students. Here's the thing. I just said मैंने आगे के प्रैक्टिकल्स कर लिए हैं मैम से पहले. उसका कोई भरोसा नहीं वो कब कराएगी. I didn't use any curse words, offensive or amusing words for the lecturer. And if using the word uska is disrespectful, then why didn't Smiley ever scream at the top of her lungs on her minions for using this word and the boys of the class like she did to me? I had heard everyone use this word normally in college. Why the drama only with me? And if this word uska is that disrespectful, then what about when we've heard Adi openly cursed at the teachers in the first semester behind their backs? Why not a word to him? That drama was only reserved for me, I guess. And talking about disrespecting teachers, a month ago, Smiley openly said about a guest lecturer, "Bhaad mein jaye wo," which translates to "he can go to hell," which another lecturer heard. He gave her an earful for saying that and literally at the end said "go to hell" on her face before leaving. I and a few students witnessed that. Smiley was such a hypocrite. That evening, I called Adi and told him how his silence during that incident made me feel isolated and lonely. I told him how I've had enough of Smiley's and her minions' mistreatment, because of which I don't feel like going to college classes anymore, and how I will apologize to her. Yes, I said apologize. Back then, I thought although I did try to avoid making a scene, it did end up making a scene. I was still processing what had happened. It took me a lot of days after the incident to realize that none of it was my fault. I told him since I won't be going to college, I will be dependent on him for notes. After talking to him, I reflected for hours and realized that depending on Adi means getting everything at the last moment, the practicals and the notes. And I was not a last moment person. So, I made the tough decision to attend the classes for the sake of my studies and completing my degree. The next day, I went to the college and sat on my seat in the lab. Smiley came and she was staring at me again like the day before. I apologized to her. And guess what she said? "Tujhe kya hota rehta hai?" Meaning, what keeps happening to you? But I didn't clarify it to her that I only apologized for partly creating a scene. Back then, I was still processing, and being the apologetic person I was, I apologized. Now, after so many years that I've completely processed it, I realized that I was an idiot to apologize. None of it was my fault to begin with. She started it, and I tried to stand for myself, although I couldn't do it properly, thanks to the severe anxiety attack that I had that day. That's what actually happened. I also remember one of the students from another class coming up to me and asking what had happened to me the previous day. I replied that nothing happened. And guess what he said? "ऐसा नहीं करना चाहिए, ये गलत है." Meaning, you shouldn't do that, it's wrong. Shouldn't do what? He clearly didn't even know what was actually going on. I guess it's easy to judge people, and he probably believed what lies Smiley had fed him. I feel so sad that I apologized and I didn't speak up. When I look back at that time, I feel like I let myself down. The one who should have apologized was Smiley, because she had created a commotion out of nowhere for no reason, for her double standards and hypocrisy, and for creating drama. I felt like she knew and she saw my weakness and took advantage of it, as if she wanted a reaction out of me. To be continued in the next part.